Hello, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Welcome back to Aces Up the Sleeve, the video version for our YouTube watchers. And for our listeners, it is just going to be a normal audio podcast. But for our listeners, as always, I am Patti. I'm co-hosting with the co-managing partner of Pocket Aces Racing, Jared Shoemaker, or Par for the quick reference. And today we're going to be joined by the regional manager for the Jockeys Guild at the Aqueduct, Belmont Park, Charlestown, Delaware Park, Meadowlands, Monmouth Parks, and Saratoga locations, Keith O'Brien. Whew, that is a list.
Thank you.
Hey,
Lovely
how are you doing today? I know, right? Like, uh-oh, what happened here? Oh, my system got mad at me. No, it didn't. I lied. This is the great start to our first ever video recording. But in this podcast, we are going to shed light on all things Pocket Aces Racing. We are going to talk about the finer points of syndicate ownership. We're going to discuss what our listeners, our viewers, our fans, and our partners have asked us to talk about. And, we are industry participants, so we're going to talk about the industry at large. But before we get going, before we jump right into our interview with Keith today. Keith, how are you doing? Thank you for joining us. We were just talking about how you're going to be. Yeah, you're going to be the very first one for our video podcast episode. So thank you so much. It is an honor.
That's awesome. I'm thrilled. I'm very honored to be the first video interview.
Well, we certainly appreciate taking time out of your busy schedule. As Patti was given during the introduction there, you got a lot on your plate, well, at least a lot of tracks on your plate, and I assume that that translates into just a whole lot of other, just all the stuff that goes along with it. So much appreciation for your time, and appreciate you bearing with us as we get our feet wet with this new format we're trying here. So,
absolutely, my pleasure.
Very good.
So in this week, we are going to sit down with Keith, and we're going to talk a little bit kind of about like what got him into racing. As we ask a lot of our interviewees, we're going to talk a little bit about what the Jockeys Guild organization actually does and the importance of having representation for riders in every state with racing and at just about every track, if not every track that offers it. So if we'll just go ahead and jump right into it with our first little introductory background question, what got you into racing?
Well, actually, I was born into racing. My dad was a steeplechase jockey in America in the 60s, early 70s. He then segued into training, and he trained thoroughbreds for many years. He actually trained a pretty famous horse in Saratoga called Fourstardave.
Okay, yeah.
Ooh, absolutely. All right. The Sultan of Saratoga.
Yep, exactly.
Nice.
So I've kind of, horse racing has always been part of my life, from my wee days. And I went to college, and I got a bachelor's degree in political science, but the pull of horse racing was just too strong. So I kind of followed suit. I followed my dad. I rode over jumps for a little while. I trained for several years, and now I'm in a new capacity working for the Jockeys Guild.
So,
very nice.
There must be a common trend with political science majors going into horse racing.
I was going to say.
Mark Wampler, my partner in Pocket Aces Racing, his degree is in political science. So there must be a good correlation there. So,
yeah,
we can't say it's the less stressful job, that's for sure. I think they're both equally as stressful.
I guess there's a lot of people, and even myself to a degree. I'm vaguely familiar with the Jockeys Guild. I know that you guys represent the jockeys, and such a dangerous and hectic career that they have. And but just if you could just kind of give our viewers, our listeners, a little bit of an overview on the role of the guild. How things all work within the guild, and just what you're doing to help out the riders every day.
Sure. Well, I mean, number one, like the Jockeys Guild is just that. It's an organization that advocates for the jockeys. It's their organization. There's a lot of steps that have to be taken. I mean, you talk about safety. Number one, safety is a priority for the Jockeys Guild. Safety for the horses, safety for the jockeys. Well, I make sure when I go to the different tracks one of my first jobs is to make sure that the safety protocols are in place. That is the ambulances. Is the ambulance following the racing? Is the proper workman's comp in place? Do they have an on-track accident policy? Um, there's that's the priority first of all is with that. And then, there's the medical standards for each racetrack can be a little bit different, and we're trying to create a medical standard, so that there's paramedics on the grounds. In the case of a catastrophic injury, the protocols are in place where there's no question, there's just action. That's priority number one. Priority number two, there with HISA and with all these new regulations and restrictions and penalties, we have to fight for the jockeys and to educate. Really, we have to educate a lot of people. How important, safety is, and also things like the riding crop. The Jockeys Guild has fought tirelessly to maintain the crop, not to abuse a horse, but for corrective measures and safety measures.
Yeah.
And let's see. I mean, we're also trying to work on the scale of weights for jockeys. I mean, jockeys nowadays they're getting taller. As everyone is getting bigger. And the weights were set, excuse me, the scale of weights were set about a century ago, so those need to change. And along with that, if you can raise the minimum weight a little bit. So right now it's 118 for 3-year-olds. If we can get that to 120, that means maybe a jockey can have a banana in the morning,
Right.
and not worry about it, and also going along with that, with the weight, it's a mental thing. We're very aware of the mental wellness nowadays and the mental health of these athletes, and that's what jockeys are. They're professional athletes, and they train. They're extremely disciplined, and they also, they're not immune to the criticisms on social media, et cetera, et cetera. And when you factor in, if a guy is starving and just punishing his body to try and ride, and then the demands to produce and to win, and then plus the criticism, there's a lot of factors that the jockeys have to deal with, and we're an organization that's there to support them and to help them and to educate them as well.
So now, do you also work with the exercise riders at the tracks, or are you exclusively just jockeys that are riding in the afternoons, or is it optional for riders? Are they able to opt into the system?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. No, right now the Jockeys Guild just works with the jockeys, and every jockey has a choice. I mean, they're independent contractors, so they don't have to join the guild. But of course, we want them to join the guild because a united voice is a stronger voice. And if you have all the jockeys on the same page, and we can fight for them. But it's not. It's strictly up to the jockey as an individual if he wants to join the guild. But it really behooves them, to join the organization, because we're, like I said, we're there to fight for them. We're there to advocate for the jockeys.
Right now, do you guys get much involved with the standard mount rates and stuff like that at each different track, or are you all involved in that negotiation? So kind of just because I know there's more that goes on than just looking, trying to keep an eye on safety regulations and all that. It's just basically, you're a union, so you're representing the riders and all aspects of their relationship with track management and the HBPA, I assume, correct?
Oh, absolutely. We work tirelessly to, increase the jockey fees, the losing mount fees, because again, it's something that hasn't really kept up with inflation. I mean, there's a lot of tracks where their mount fees they haven't changed in 10, 15 years, and I
Yeah.
mean, when you think about, I mean, say, for example, $100 for riding a horse, it's not a lot of money, and then out of that $100, they have to pay their agent, they have to pay their valet, and they have to pay taxes. So at the end of the day, if you ride a race and you finish seventh, you're not coming home with an awful lot of money, for the risk and for the training and the years of dedication that it takes. So it's something that we work with horsemen's organizations, we work with the racetracks to try and improve that, and we're doing that right now. We're trying to raise the the minimum rate to $150 per mount. Which is not, I don't believe, unrealistic. Considering
Now you're looking
with inflation and with.
you're looking at that
I'm
for,
sorry.
is that going to be, basically you're hoping to get that industry standard every track in the country?
Yes, yes, exactly. I think, and I don't think it's unfair. I don't think it's unrealistic. I mean, the jockeys. I mean, and when you think about too, what jockeys have to do to secure mounts. I mean, they're going out in the morning. They're breezing horses. They're sometimes even galloping horses. They don't get paid for that. It's you're doing that when the hope that you're going to ride that horse in the afternoon. So, I mean, if for $150, that's a lot of work you're putting into just for that $150. And then hopefully you can win. I mean, obviously the objective is to win and win as many races as you can. But, being realistic, there's a lot of guys out there that don't ride a lot. They don't win a lot. So the $150, it's significant for them.
Yeah, and I definitely support that. And I think that, I agree with you 100% and agree completely. We're going to have to get some tracks to adjust and increase purses because, the owners are the ones that
Hmm.
are paying that, and that's fine. I'm happy to do it. Those guys, every time they get on a horse, they're putting their lives at risk. And, so for me, sure, let's pay them $150 a mount. Let's pay them $200 a mount. I'm good with that. And, but there are some tracks around the country that we need to catch up, and we know that they've got the money. We know that they can put more money in the purse structures if they were so willing. Many of them just choose not to. So, and again, I'm not asking you. I'm not saying Belterra Park needs to make their maiden specials $30,000 a pop instead of 16. But you know what? Let's get it up there to somewhat reasonable. Where
Hmm.
everybody that's involved can continue to make a living at this.
Yeah, exactly. That's the priority. Is, you do it. We get into the game for the love of it, but at the end of the day, you have to be able to make a living. You
Right.
have to be realistic, and I agree 100%. That the purses need to be increased. Everything across the board for everyone, for the owners. The owners foot the majority of the expense. I mean, they deserve more as well.
But
They
again, yeah,
absolutely
but
do.
like I said, to me, the riders are they're way more responsible for winning any races than I'll ever be. All I do is write checks and talk. So, but yeah, I definitely think that. I mean, again, it's I've known too many riders or too many riders have ridden for us over the years that have suffered career-ending injuries, and they have suffered.
Hmm.
One that rode for us a lot, and he got killed on the racetrack. And they literally are putting their lives on the line every time that they get in the saddle, and we need to recognize that as an industry and do better by them, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. For the horses are the star, but the jockeys are the face.
Right.
Without the jockey, there isn't a horse race. So it's very important. And that's actually, I'm glad you pointed that out. We work closely with the PDJF as well, which is the Permanently
Mhm.
Disabled Jockey Fund, for to provide for jockeys who have been injured in a catastrophic accident. Haven't been killed, thankfully, but they can't ride anymore, and they need financial help. And we're actually also instigating. We go to a lot. I don't. Not every track has this right now, but we've established an agreement with Transamerica to have a retirement account for the
Oh,
jockeys.
nice.
So like so they take whether it be an amount or a percentage of their jockey fee, and it goes straight into an IRA.
Mhm.
So that they can forget about it. And then at the end of the day, when they finish riding, that they have a little something, a little nest egg saved.
Sure.
And I think it's very, very important for them. The young jock, especially the young riders, they think it's never going to stop. They're
Right.
riding, they're winning, they're making money, and they're spending it as they're making it. But you try and educate them to, well, put a little aside as well for the
And,
rainy day and for when you finish riding.
for casual fans of racing, I think they maybe they could listen to a conversation like this and be like, "What are those guys talking about?" I watch Saratoga and Keeneland and Churchill Downs on the weekends, and those races are crazy money, and the jockeys are making crazy money. And why should they be? They're taken care of. But the vast majority of the jockeys in this country are not riding at Churchill Downs and Saratoga and Keeneland. In fact, it's all the same guys that are riding at Saratoga that are also riding at Keeneland, and then they're moving to Churchill. And most of the folks that are in this game, I think of Perry Utes at Belterra Park. The man is he's hit 70, right? Patty, do you know?
Yeah, he
He's in the
has. Yep.
70s. The dude is
Yep.
still out
Yeah.
there riding. He's riding every morning, and he's riding every afternoon, and he's still riding well. And
I think the statistic I read about him was like he's one of like 2 jockeys left in the country that like was riding when Secretariat was racing. I think that's the statistic I read somewhere. Like it's wild. Like we joke that Perry Utes is the evergreen man, but like Perry Utes has been around a while.
been around
He's
a
good at
long
what he
time,
does.
and he's still riding at Belterra Park, where the most money he's ever going to ride for in any one race is, if it's a state bred and he's running an open company, he's probably riding for a maximum purse on a very, very rare occasion of $40,000, and it's usually he's riding for $10,000 or $15,000 purses, and that's the reality for most of the riders out there. There's way more Perry Uteses and Deshaun Parkers than there are Tyler Gaffleones and Junior Alvarados.
Yep, absolutely. And that's who we fight for as much or even more so is for the small guys, the guys that are riding at the small tracks. And and a lot of times they'll wonder like, well, okay, what is the guild going to do for me? Well, we're going to fight for you. That's what we're going to do. We're going to try and get, like I said, the losing mount fee up. We're going to try and protect your interests, and if they run afoul of the stewards or there's a miscommunication, the Jockey Guild is there to represent them and to be their voice, you know. And but like you said, but it's very important that they understand that every track is extremely important. The guys at Belterra are just as important to us as the guys in Saratoga.
Right.
They're all very important.
Absolutely. So now, do you all provide health insurance and things like that for riders, or is that an option for them?
Well, what we do is we have a temporary disability
Okay.
policy, so that if they get that pays them for up to 2 years. And what we've partnered with some tracks, not all tracks, a reimbursement policy. So if a jockey, they have for their personal insurance, if they go to the doctor and they provide receipts, they get reimbursed for that money. Their premiums can get reimbursed, but not every track is on board, and that's something we're fighting for as well. We're trying to get. I mean, New York is on board. Churchill Downs is on board. The Stronach Group, they're on board, but several of the other tracks are not, and that's a difficult fight. But it's a fight we're doing and we're performing, and we're trying to get coverage for these guys.
Well, I tell you what, after every time I get my insurance bill from NYRA, they need to be taking care of the riders better than anybody, because Lord knows they are charging owners out the nose for it, and which is fine. Again, I'm not complaining. I'm just saying I hope that the guys are getting, and the ladies are getting what they're getting what they deserve from NYRA, because man. I think we ran second in that race, or third in that race, and earned $11,000, and almost 3,000 of it went into one was workers' comp, and then another fund, and which is great. Again, it's fine, it's great, but man, I hope they're using those funds appropriately and doing everything they can. So it's good to hear that they're reimbursing for health expenses and things like that. So that's good to know. That makes me feel even better about them taking that money out of the purse account for it. So it's good.
Oh yeah, no. Rest assured, it's going to the guys that qualify and that need it. Absolutely. I mean, there is a number of rides. You have to ride at least 200 races in New York to be eligible for it.
Gotcha.
But once you reach that point, they're eligible.
So it's total 200, not on like a yearly basis, right? Like it's a total 200.
No, it's 200 over the course of a year.
Over the year. Okay.
So just you touched on the number of races riding in New York. So explain a little bit. Apprentice jockey and journeyman and all those different things, and I assume that you deal with those guys on different levels, and maybe they have different benefits based on the number of mounts they've had or wins. I don't know. Maybe they do. Maybe they don't. But can you get into a little bit of that for us? I think probably a lot of our people don't know. Hear us talk about a bug or an apprentice, and they don't know what we're talking about.
Oh, sure. Well, an apprentice or a bug rider is someone that gets a weight allowance for, in a ride. They're inexperienced. It's usually their first or second year riding races professionally. So it starts off as a 10 pound, they get 10 pounds off. So if a horse is carrying 122 with a journeyman jockey, which is a regular jockey, under an apprentice, they'd be carrying 112. So that's a significant weight break. After they win 5 races, that allowance goes to 7 pounds. And then when they win their 35th race as a 7 pound apprentice, they get a year with the 5 pound allowance. So I mean, it's the idea is, your lack of experience, you get weight off of a horse, so that's an incentive for an owner and a trainer to ride you, and then and you'll see the really good apprentices will ride tremendous amount of horses because they're good and they win, and the weight allowance is a big advantage for them.
Absolutely. So now, are there different levels of support, or for the apprentice jockeys versus the journeyman jockeys, or the different services that you guys offer different?
No, no, all jockeys are entitled to the exact same. Like I said, we represent apprentices, we represent journeymen, we represent the guy that rides 10 races, we represent the guy that rides 1,000 races. They're all equally important to us, and they all get the same amount of attention.
And so when they come to the track, they've probably been riding somewhere at a training center, or work, ride in the mornings for a jock or for a trainer, and they come and say, "Okay, I'm ready to I'm ready to ride in the afternoons and be a rider." How does that? What's the process of getting them into the guild and getting them representation, and how does that all work for them?
Well, I mean, if I say a young man, a young woman, they want to be a jockey. Okay, great. They have to go and learn the rudiments of riding. A lot of times you go to a farm in Ocala or Kentucky, they'll learn how to ride. Then usually they'll get hooked up with a big trainer, the big outfits, and you're galloping horses and you start breezing horses, and then you're breezing and you're breezing, and it takes about a year or so of steadily breezing horses to develop your seat, to develop an understanding of okay, communicating with the horse, understanding instructions, and then basically you'll say to a trainer, I really want to ride, will you give me a shot, will you give me a chance? So, and then once the jockey's name appears on the overnight, then they can get licensed.
Okay.
So they can go to the gaming commission and they get licensed as a jockey, and then from there they can start to ride. Sometimes they'll have an agent right away. Sometimes, agents will want to see them ride a little bit, see, okay, are they going to make it, or what kind of a work ethic do they have? Are they going to work hard, et cetera, et cetera? And then once they're a jockey, once they're a licensed jockey, they're eligible to join the guild, and we welcome them, and we hope they do. A lot of times, sometimes they wait. The apprentices wait until they've won a certain amount of races. I think that might be a little misconception on their part, thinking, "Oh no, I'm not good enough to join the guild," but that's not true. I mean, once you've ridden one race, you're a jockey. You're welcome to the guild, and we want you.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, it's well, again, I'm guilty as anybody that probably is a casual fan, and how I'm right in the middle of the industry, and I don't really have I've learned more about the guild today than I've ever known. So, I think it's really I appreciate the information, and so you've got kind of the Mid Atlantic area, and how many other regions are there
Mhm.
that are represented?
Well, there's the South, like your Florida tracks. Then there's the Midwest, which is broken up into two. You've got sort of Kentucky, Ohio, Louisiana, and then there's Oklahoma, Colorado. And then the West Coast, you've got, of course, the California tracks and some of the Oregon or Washington State there. So there's a regional manager for each of those areas.
Gotcha.
Like I said, like every track, whether it be a fair, but if there's jockeys that are members of the Jockeys Guild, we're there, and we represent them.
And exclusively thoroughbreds, or no quarter horses or anything like that?
No, and quarter horses too.
Okay.
No, yeah, quarter horses as well. I don't cover quarter horse because obviously there's no quarter horse racing here, and I don't have that much experience with quarter horses. But Daryl O'Hare, Javier Torres, these guys, Joel, they handle the quarter horse jockeys as well.
Okay, very cool.
Cool.
Yeah, I love summertime and the summers because that's when most of the racing activity is happening. And going on to Equibase and pulling up the condition book pages and seeing all of the tracks that you never hear about, you never see, and Nebraska and Idaho and all the different small little tracks all over the country, where I think they race 2 or 3, maybe 4 weeks out of the year, and I'm always fascinated. How do they even find the riders to get in there for those couple weeks to even be able to card all the races that they card, and horses and trainers and the whole 9 yards. So I know that's not the area that you work in, but do you have kind of any concept of just is it like they travel around from small little track to small little track to small little track? You know how that?
Oh yeah, I mean that's like your typical sort of the nomadic lifestyle of a lot of these jocks, like that will go and ride these short term meets, and if they provide purses and there's horses to ride, you're going to get jockeys.
Somebody's going to be there to ride them, right?
Yeah, exactly. Somebody wants to, and they're willing and able.
Yeah, if you bring it, they will come.
Yep, exactly.
So, kind of just switching away a little bit from your role in the guild, and just thinking about the industry as a whole, and for you personally, is there a horse or a race that just, when you think about it, just the nostalgia hits you, it just stands out in your memory? Again, either just something that really, a moment in racing that just has been left an indelible mark on you as a fan of racing.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I'm a little selfish, but I mean, the horse that made my dad, I mean, that made things possible was Fourstardave. He was everything to the O'Brien family.
Yeah.
And then when his younger brother won the Irish 2000 Guineas 4-star All Star, that was a momentous occasion. I mean, it was something that had never been done before, and it's long. I mean, we're talking 30 years before Wesley starting going to Royal Ascot. I mean, my dad conceived this idea to go to Ireland and win a classic, and he actually pulled it off.
Right.
That was pretty cool. It really was.
That's great.
I remember talking to my dad about that. When he was telling me when 4-star All Star was a 2-year-old, he said, I think I want to take this horse over for the 2000 Guineas. And I thought, what? Are you crazy, Dad? Why do you want to do that? He said, no, I think I really believe this horse could do it. And I thought, I mean, I'm a son, and here am I thinking, crazy, Dad? And sure enough, though, he did it.
That's great. So the whole family go make that trip?
Actually, my mom and my dad did. I wasn't able to because I was riding over jumps at the time.
Gotcha.
So I was at a place called Radnor, Pennsylvania.
Oh yeah,
riding in a jump race on that day.
I tell you,
you gotta work. You gotta work.
Over the loudspeaker. Yeah, exactly.
I have a very
I mean, it was
love-hate relationship with jump races. I love it. I'm fascinated by it. It is. I think it's beautiful to watch. I love going to, and I was slightly different, but like the cross country events, when they always do them at the Kentucky Horse Park. So I love them. I think it's very exciting racing to me. But and Patty's probably heard me tell this story before, and I know some of our partners, about some people that listen to this probably know
the losing wager.
So there were four of us that went to Keeneland on a Friday afternoon, and we started at the very first race on Friday. We each put in $2, and we started to show parlay. We cashed out at several hundred, many hundreds of dollars each on day one, and then left some of it to start over on Saturday. And we did not miss a single race. And it comes to me, my turn, and it's the Queen Elizabeth race where they used to do the jumps at Keeneland. And I know nothing about betting them. I've watched them. I think it's cool. It's a lot of fun. And I'm looking at the weight these riders are like 150 pounds, and I'm like, this is unusual.
Yeah.
Right. And I know my turn, and it's like up to $500, $600, $700 again in the pool. And I'm like, I don't have any idea what to do, so I'm just going to bet on this favorite, and I can't remember the name. And I swear he hadn't lost a race in he won like 7 or 8 straight races. I'm putting all the money on them. At first, I begged him, please don't make me bet this race. Nope, got to do it. So I did it. Put it all on the favorite. The very first fence, he dropped the rider.
Oh.
So I've had
That's like the best feeling.
bitter about that for 15 years.
That's heartbreaking. I mean, I wish I could say it doesn't happen very often, but it does happen.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the pitfalls of jump racing.
That's right. But I am fascinated by it. It's a beautiful. Most of them are so graceful going over those fences, and it's just I love watching it. So I'll never bet on them again, but I love watching them.
Because I mean, it's usually the form of a jump race works out a little bit better than the form of a flat race.
Yeah,
but there are those occasions if somebody makes a mistake over a fence and deposits the jock.
Yeah, he was like 1 to 5 or something like that. He's the surest thing that you're ever going to see. And I'm like, guys, I know we're supposed to bet long shots, but I'm putting it on this one because it's too much money, and I don't know what I'm looking at. And sure enough, down he went. But anyway.
Oh gosh, it's actually there's a funny story. There's years ago there was an old gambler here in New York, and he always used to ask us, what do you think of your horse? And one day he started talking to me about his story. He said, I remember when your dad rode over jumps. I said, oh, yeah, he said, I never used to bet the jumpers, but one day your dad was riding a first-time starter for Sydney Waters, a horse called Balar. And this horse was a nice horse on the flat. He'd won a lot of races on the flat. He might even have placed in a stake race. And he said, I'm going to bet this horse. I'm going to bet this jumper. He was like 3 to 5 to win the race. It was at Saratoga. And he's in front every step of the way. And the last fence, he made a mistake and my dad fell off him. And the guy said, I never bet another jumper after that.
Never again.
Very similar to your story.
I'm glad I'm not the only one that has sworn off because of that.
Yeah, so you're not alone.
Well, if you could just imagine for a moment, there's been a lot of changes in thoroughbred racing over the last couple years, especially. It's changed dramatically, I think, in the last 20 years that I've been involved. But if you're king for a day in the sport and you can make any change, what change would you want to make to improve our industry?
I kind of I grew up in racing, and I grew up when the big outfits, I remember vividly, when Green Tree had a barn and Firestone had a barn and Darby Dan had a barn, and obviously the Phipps is Rokeby. And I really believe that the size of public stables is too big. It's too industrious almost, I think, I'm not trying to denigrate, because obviously the trainers that do that are excellent at their job. They know how to train horses. But there's an awful lot of trainers out there that are good horse people, that are hard workers. They never get a shot.
Yeah.
And with the decline of the foal crop, to where it is now, we're lucky if we've got 20,000 foals. that means that there's even less of a pool to draw from. So if you have these, say 10 outfits that have several hundred horses, obviously they're going to have 102-year-olds. They're going to have 50 maidens, and then you've got an outfit maybe with 5 or 6 horses. He's got 1 2-year-old or 2 2-year-olds. He's got a maiden. The disparity of competition, I think, is just, it's bad for the sport, and it's bad for gambling too. I mean, I think from a gambler's perspective, you're not getting any value. You've got these 5 or 6 horse maidens, and obviously there's 1 or 2 of them that are overwhelmingly better than the rest of them. The rest of them are in there to fill races, and you kind of wonder, well, how long can that really go on? I mean, how long are the people with a handful of horses going to support racing so that the same guys can go out and win time and time again? It becomes a vicious cycle. So that, I mean, that is my perspective. I mean, I know it sort of goes against the American way, like freedom of making a living, and free and trying to build something big. But American racing was built around racetracks, and those guys that developed racing understood with parimutuel wagering, the importance of big fields. So they never, I mean, the Whitneys, the Vanderbilts, I mean, they could have had 500 horses if they wanted, but they understood that they had to keep it to a certain number in order to promote competition, to promote, and sport. And that's what I think has been lost. I mean, how do you get it back? You're going to have to ruffle a few feathers, but I think ultimately that's something that should be looked at very seriously.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
it's
my opinion.
I can't find fault with that. I mean, I think you can look to California and you can see the tail end of the results of that. Yeah, I mean, I think a big reason that California racing struggles is because of exactly what you said, and that's part of it anyway.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
yeah.
it's certainly part.
All right. Well, again, thank you so much for joining us today. I sincerely appreciate it. I know you're super
Oh,
busy, and I think one of my favorite parts since we started doing this podcast, one of my favorite things is getting to learn more about the the pieces of the industry and the roles in the industry and the people involved in the industry that uh, are behind the scenes and we don't really get to see otherwise, and we don't really have maybe a full grasp of what's going on with so many of the most they're jockeys are, again, as you mentioned earlier, they're one of the most important pieces of this. There's the horse, there's rider, and there's owners, and those three pieces kind of make it all go. But there's so many more pieces with the grooms and track superintendents and just everything.
hmm
There's so many pieces involved in this industry that most people aren't aware of and never get to hear from. So I really, really sincerely appreciate you joining us today.
Oh, thank you very much. I mean, and to add to that, with all those pieces, it's so important that they communicate. Like
Yeah.
the Jockeys
Yeah.
Guild communicates with the track superintendents. Exactly, with the trainers, with the executives. It's having open lines of communication is behooves us all and benefits
Yeah.
racing in general. To create the product that people will want to come and see and wager on.
Yeah, absolutely. I cannot agree more.
Oh, and it's like, I don't know any situation really where, four people stood in four different rooms and talked to themselves and anything got done. Like
Yeah.
it's kind of what it
Yeah.
feels like sometimes, that everybody's screaming in an empty room, but they're
Yeah.
not screaming at each other.
Right. That's right.
I know, yeah. I mean, you need the discourse. You need to be able to respectfully disagree and say, no, we need this, or like, okay, if you give us this, we'll give you that. I mean, whatever it may be, there has to be communication.
Yeah. Well, appreciate all of your efforts to represent the riders because, well, like I said numerous times today, I mean, I have so much respect for them, and I'm a little amazed every time that they go out and just put it all out there on the line like they do, and so appreciate the fact they got somebody like you in their corner helping them out.
Yeah, and thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Patty, close us out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Thanks everybody for tuning in to our listeners and to the watchers this time when this inevitably goes up on the YouTube. So thanks to everybody who tunes in every single week. We appreciate everybody's support no matter what mode you use to listen to us talk to ourselves. Make sure that you are subscribed to any of our channels, which is the Apple Podcast and the Spotify. Make sure that you are also on our social media pages, which is the Facebook, the Instagram, Twitter. I think we're also on Threads now. I know I've been getting notifications about the Threads, so we're also over on Threads if anybody has migrated over there. Make sure that you are also subscribed to the YouTube channel. We're Pocket Aces Racing under all of these social medias, under the YouTube. It's all Pocket Aces Racing. And make sure on that YouTube you hit the bell so you do get the notification when this video inevitably goes up and when others like it start going up as well, especially for our September sale and our October racing. I know the Cut the Deck mini-series is going to be going to Keeneland for that first opening weekend in October. And then we're going to have a lot of Keeneland September features and interviews and stuff for you guys to enjoy. So definitely tune in for those as well. And as I tell everybody every week, have a happy Wednesday, have a good Wednesday, make good choices. And the podcast is out.